Day 824 of the Ukrainian War Map, also known as the Russo-Ukrainian War. Juzzie here, and today is another update as I take a simplified and down-to-earth approach to some of the most important happenings on the ground in Ukraine. So starting off, we'll take a look at those Russian losses, as currently Russia sits on more than 503,000 military personnel losses, blowing right past that 500k figure from just the other day, and with another 1,460 losses in the past day. Then as for hardware losses, 21 tanks, 40 APVs, and a whopping mammoth 48 artillery. And do stick around because I'll later show you in this video an example of what this artillery attrition has led to within the Russian army. Then we'll head to the map and we'll start out in Russia today as a fire broke out at a grain terminal in the port of Azov in the Rostov region. The terminal, a crucial hub for the export of allegedly stolen Ukrainian grain, was getting consumed by flames, as reports suggested that the fire started at the grain facility, which has been instrumental in the loading and shipping of a significant portion of the misappropriated Ukrainian harvest. Then briefly we head all the way up to the north to Moscow as a drone was shot down by Russian air defense over the Balakshika suburb of the city, as reported by the governor. And bearing in mind it occurred just slightly north of the city and to the east, which means that this UFO, probably a scout drone, that likely traversed hundreds upon hundreds of miles of what we all once believed to be some of the most heavily protected airspace on Earth. We don't think that anymore. Instead, Russia is sending upwards of 90% of their air defense platforms down south to, in a way, protect Ukrainian airspace. And sometimes protecting from their very own fighter jets in friendly fire incidents. Meanwhile, we've just very recently seen installations of anti-drone nets over critical infrastructure facilities in Moscow. So, from Kyiv in 3 days to anti-drone nets in Moscow. Wow. Then on the map, and moving somewhat far east, as announced yesterday, but happening the day before. A Ukrainian drone reportedly penetrated deep into Russian territory, traveling an unprecedented 1,800 kilometers to strike a critical military target near the city of Orsk. And that target, the Voronezh M radar station. This station, designed for long-range detection of aerial and space objects, including ballistic and cruise missiles, boasts an impressive target detection range of up to 6,000 kilometers, though in reality it may be closer to somewhere around half that distance or figure. Now, Russian sources did in fact confirm the incident, suggesting that the fallen UAV may indeed have targeted a military object. And so this latest strike marks a significant milestone, as Orsk lies about 140 kilometers, or about 90 miles, further from the Ukrainian border compared to the previous UAV record holder up in Bashkortostan. Now, this latest attack also follows a similar strike on May 23 when another drone targeted another Voronezh M radar station in the Krasnodarian territory, resulting in a fire on the premises. So in all, it doesn't feel like a coincidence, as Ukraine is probably prepping the skies for the introduction of the upcoming F-16s into Ukraine. Then moving along on the map all the way to the east of Ukraine, as Luhansk was rocked by explosions and a massive fire overnight, where the blaze erupted right by an airfield and an aviation school and an aircraft repair plant, according to locals in the region. Ukrainian military officials have not yet commented on the incident, but recent satellite images suggest that equipment had been relocated to the area in the past. And so it appeared that this latest strike has Ukrainian-operated ATACMS missiles written all over it, which also follows a recent series of ATACMS strikes in the occupied eastern Donbass region and Crimea. But then also, geolocating satellite firms data showed a number of heat signatures spread out in a fashion similar to that of the ATACMS cluster munitions, as we've already seen with other events from the recent past. Then headed across to the northeastern borders, or the border clashes, as there hasn't been a noticeable frontline change in the past 7 or 8 days now. Although that happenstance is worthy of a bit of further context, as Ukrainian soldiers on the Kharkiv front have expressed frustration over the restrictions on using Western supplied weapons to strike Russian territory. For instance, in a poignant statement, one soldier questioned the logic of standing idly by while being attacked from across the border. Or put another way, Russia has unfettered access to striking into Ukrainian territory with all of their weapons available, whereas Ukraine can only strike into Russian territory by use of only a portion of their weapons available. For instance, they can use drones and most NATO and Soviet artillery shells, but they are restricted as it relates to UK, US, and French glide munitions, the aviation, the air-launched ones, also HIMARS rockets, of course, then also cruise missiles, and then some NATO rocket artillery platforms as well. Excalibur 155mm artillery shells on top of that. And as such, NATO Secretary General Stoltenberg, among others, has stated it's like Ukraine is fighting with one arm tied behind its back. In fact, the NATO PA, or the NATO Parliamentary Assembly, has urged allied governments to lift restrictions on Ukraine's use of Western-supplied weapons to strike legitimate targets inside of Russia. Michael Sheba, the president of the NATO PA, emphasized the need for a swift and unrestricted delivery of air defense systems and other vital weapons to Ukraine, and meanwhile, NATO Secretary General Stoltenberg stated that the right to self-defense includes hitting legitimate targets outside of Ukraine in Russian territory. But it's not all doom and gloom, as there has been some headway on this front, as a NATO PA declaration was made, which is a sort of like a recommendation or a formal statement of opinion, but not a law, which was approved by a majority of the 281 lawmakers, and calls for NATO member states to support Ukraine in defending itself by allowing strikes on legitimate targets inside of Russia. However, some countries still remain cautious due to fears of escalation. But like anything, it's really the dance that is outplayed here, politically speaking, where a need is recognized, then spoken about at some length for some time, until it's finally adopted. Oh, and also note, Putin just stated during a recent press conference that if Ukraine uses these weapons inside of Russia, Russia will have to decide on extension of a buffer zone. Now, a couple of things to say here. First of all, Russia has already decided on a Ukrainian-wide buffer zone extension, if they can get it. And second of all, if Ukraine uses these weapons inside of Russia, it will only severely hamper Russia's ability to make said extensions in the very first place. But having said all that, some nations are starting to allow Ukraine to use their weapons inside of Russia. And I'll mention a bit more about that in a news segment shortly. Then for a moment on the map, moving across to the Sumy Oblast, as in a decisive military operation, Ukrainian forces have reportedly captured a Russian subversive intelligence group operating in the Sumy region, which dealt a significant blow to Russia's clandestine activities within Ukrainian territory on this occasion. And as you can see there, a Russian group was surrendering, holding up some piece of cardboard and possibly some underwear too. Then moving down further on the map, as there was no shortage of activity near Chasiv Yar, where more repelled Russian attacks have been taking place. With so far, we saw a Russian T-90 tank destroyed, another T-72, and a BMD armoured fighting vehicle. Also note, the T-90 tank appeared to be sporting what almost looks like a racing spoiler on the back. Although perhaps it was just the incomplete portion of a DIY drone cage installation, but not finished due to a Russian commander forcing the incursion attempt on the spot. Then taking a look around on the map today, somewhere in the east, south and north, as destruction of a Russian turtle tank was seen in the area of Klishchivka, which continues to put on display their lack of impenetrability. Then also in the east, we witnessed the epic detonation of a Russian 152mm Mr. S self-propelled howitzers ammunition load after an attack by a Ukrainian drone in the Luhansk region. Then headed across to some news for today, and in follow-up to the earlier mention, Sweden has officially approved Ukraine's use of Swedish-supplied weapons against targets within Russian territory. Defense Minister Pal Johnson emphasized that Sweden fully supports Ukraine's right to self-defense under international law, including military actions aimed at enemy territory, as long as they comply with the laws of war. And in a statement to a local media outlet, Johnson declared, quote, "Ukraine is exposed to an unprovoked and illegal war of aggression by Russia. According to international law, Ukraine has the right to defend itself through military actions aimed at the enemy's territory as long as the military actions comply with the laws of war." As such, Sweden stands behind international law and Ukraine's right to defend itself. And we should also be seeing this more and more. So among the Swedish weapon systems provided to Ukraine are at least 8 Archer self-propelled howitzers, which have earned very high praise from Ukrainian artillerists for their precision, dubbing them quote-unquote sniper artillery. Then in some other news, France is preparing to send military instructors to Ukraine to train soldiers, according to Alexander Syrsky, Commander-in-Chief of Ukraine's armed forces. This announcement follows a video meeting between Syrsky and French Defense Minister Sébastien Lecornu earlier in May. And this latest development comes amid reports of other NATO member states discussing the possibility of deploying instructors or contractors to Ukraine to provide training and assist with equipment repairs. Now, as it stands, Ukraine has requested assistance from NATO countries to train about 150,000 soldiers closer to the front lines. And so as for this latest French development, Syrsky revealed that he had signed documents allowing for the first French instructors to visit Ukrainian training centers soon, expressing hope that France's determination would encourage other partners to join the project. Of course, this type of news is not at all to be confused with the potential presence of NATO troops in Ukraine, which has been a topic of debate, with French President Macron, for example, considering the possibility of sending troops if requested, and also stating of a very high likelihood of it happening should large swaths of Ukrainian front lines collapse. Then in some other news, Ukraine and Spain have taken a significant step towards strengthening their bilateral ties with the signing of a 10-year security agreement between President Zelensky and Spanish President Pedro Sanchez just yesterday. And as a tally, Spain becomes the 10th country to enter into such an agreement with Ukraine now. So, under the terms of this latest security agreement, Spain will provide Ukraine with 1 billion euros in support for 2024 and a total of 5 billion euros by 2027, where this year's package will focus on air defense support to help Ukraine counter Russian aerial attacks. Which is a bit of a reminder of how these bilateral security agreements work, as they identify clear and present needs for the armed forces of Ukraine and provide assistance on an expedited basis. Then headed across to a lighter segment, or what initially feels like a lighter segment, maybe frustratingly lighter, as a video appeared online showing wild roe deer in the minefields of the Kherson region. You can see one of the minefields right there. As in a heartwarming yet heart-wrenching video, the deer can be seen navigating the perilous minefield of the Kherson region, which also serves as a stark reminder of the far-reaching consequences of Russia's aggression, which poses a threat not only to human life, but also to the innocent creatures that inhabit these war-torn lands. Then headed across to a quick funny to round it all off today, guys. So the Russian military has made some new firepower innovations, this time combining a 73mm Grom cannon salvaged from a BMP-1 infantry fighting vehicle wreck, which in all likelihood that BMP otherwise probably fell into complete disrepair. And so then they combined it with a towed wheelbase from an old 1960s Soviet Vasily Ok mortar piece. So this latest contraption is designed really only for close-range fire, given that the cannon only has an effective firing range of 8 to 1300 meters, although accuracy and effectiveness decrease significantly after 800 plus meters, which is also easily discernible through that flat elevation of the cannon anyway. And it definitely won't be able to hit into trenches or anything of the sort. But they're not my only concerns, because the BMP-1's cannon design was already widely known to have problems with accuracy from its inception. And that's when utilizing the actual BMP vehicle hull to stabilize the fire. But as you can see here, no real counterweight to speak of. So basically, they've invented a stationary BMP-1 without any armor that only acts in close range. Even mid-19th century rifled artillery cannons have longer range, some of which have been known to have outstanding accuracy. So there's well more than a chance that old artillery cannon fire would be more concerning for the Ukrainian forces. Then also, this latest device is literally just an overweight Soviet SPG-9, which by contrast is lightweight, portable, recoilless smoothbore, and used for anti-tank and infantry support roles. So just a better and more mobile platform that we're not seeing here. But I'd have to say, most importantly in all of this is to create something like this means that Russia is simply running out of the fit-for-purpose howitzers or BMP chassis. I mean, take your pick, probably both. So here it is, folks, the self-proclaimed world's most modern army. If you say so. So that's it for today, guys. Thanks again for watching. I appreciate all of the likes and the support. Please continue to comment. You'll usually see me somewhere in there, in the very least, giving a like. And I do hope to see all of you guys there in the next one. Cheers.